Tough times may be ahead for Poland under Tusk's new government. Here's a report by Adrian Borecki. Well, who among us doesn't remember these legendary words? There just isn't any money, and there won't be. Those times, with the return of Prime Minister Tusk, are coming back. All right, well, one by one, let's explain what money isn't there and won't be there. Firstly, there's no money for laptops for students. There's no money. There have been serious reservations made by the European Commission regarding the preparation of this project and its feasibility. Also, regarding securing students from cyber threats. These laptops were also proposed without any ideas in terms of educational value. The Minister of Digitization commented in a very similar vein. There's no money from the EU, as 2023 expenditures have been questioned, or is there any in the budget, as it hasn't been secured yet? I understand that the budget money was not there, and in the new one, is it not there either? Nope, there's no money. We are in interministerial dialogue. On our side, the willingness is there, but there's no money, and there are problems on how to account for it. I can say that today there are more question marks than space to maneuver. The European Commission's reservations, however, were caused by omissions made by the ministry headed by Barbara Nowacka. No invoices have been submitted so far to the European Commission. No work has been undertaken in the Education Ministry that should have been done for this program to take effect this year. This basically means that Barbara Nowacka slept through those first few weeks and is now trying to put the blame on the previous government. And now, secondly, Tusk's government doesn't have the money to freeze electricity prices until the end of the year either. Why can't we keep freezing energy prices? What's wrong with doing that? Well, it's a growing budget burden. We no longer have the funds for it. And in that case, this will mean gigantic cost increases for Poles due to the government's decisions. Energy bills may increase by up to 64% as early as from July. And things were supposed to be so fresh and so beautiful. I believe that today, if I were a prime minister today, electricity and gas bills would be half. In these coming days, we're preparing for a disaster. For example, a family of 4 using a furnace, it'll have to pay over 3,000 złotych more for electricity next year if the electricity price freeze is not extended. A working group set up by Law and Justice has proposed a solution. Well, we've proposed solutions that will not burden the budget, or at least only to a very small extent. Here, we've proposed a tax on excess profits made by energy companies from all sectors and subsectors of energy companies in order to make the burden on the budget as small as possible. The Law and Justice team also proposed extending a zero VAT rate on food until the end of the year. If the government does nothing, Jarosław Kaczyński's team will prepare a parliamentary projects. The government, however, is unlikely to be counted on, and this has been shown by Prime Minister Donald Tusk's behavior. A meeting of the Council of Ministers took place today without his participation. The head of government has apparently overexerted himself in his less than 2 months in power. He's now taking a rest in the Italian Dolomites, as we see here. They should really get down to work and not look for reasons to procrastinate. Anyone can find reasons to not do something. I suggest that they roll up their sleeves and get to work.
A ja proponuję, żeby oni zakasali rękawy I wzięli się do roboty.
Key positions in government administration or state-owned companies remain vacant. These are things for which we will continue to criticize the government. So, actions beneficial to Poles are scarce. Tusk is only passing on information about the lack of money for various programs, as was the case during his previous governments. And this through the mouths of his ministers, not his own. Well, he prefers that in addition to these decisions, let the ministers shoulder it. I think this is the main reason for his disappearance at this time. For me, it's a matter of avoiding responsibility for these decisions, which are precisely unfavorable to Poles. I will emphasize again, all this is against the interests of every citizen. We will soon see how the daily lives of Poles will change to their disadvantage. These facts have been recognized by the rating agencies as well. They warn the escalation of political tensions in Poland has increased the risks to the government's effectiveness, which could complicate fiscal consolidation efforts and negatively affect market sentiment, especially if it undermines the stability and functioning of key institutions. From the moment the new government appeared, these problems began, announcing the withdrawal from the CPK and other large investments, question marks with the arms industry. We're watching all these things. Unfortunately, this is all very dangerous because we'll be going backwards economically. And finally, pensioners, whom Minister Nowacka apparently despises, should also start to worry. What's most important is to talk to young people because they're the ones who will change Poland, because it'll be their Poland, not the Poland of pensioners who are all flustered due to their loss in the elections. The truth comes out. Superficial smiles, hearts on lapels, but what they're really doing is insulting people. And this is what the Tusk coalition seems to be really strong at, or rather, rich with. And we go to another delay in another huge project in Poland, this time a delay in sending documents to Brussels by Donald Tusk's government has stalled the start of construction of a 20 billion PLN Intel factory in Miękiny, near Wrocław. This despite the fact that the project could have started as early as this quarter. Described as one of the flagship projects of Mateusz Morawiecki's government, the establishment of the Semiconductor Integration and Testing Facility was hailed as the largest foreign direct investment in Poland. This project aimed to integrate Poland into the global technological circuit. However, recent reports suggest that the project's timeline has now become unrealistic due to the government's delay in submitting certain paperwork. Apparently, the government's hesitance to send an approximately 6 billion PLN public assistance request stems from a desire to renegotiate the terms of the agreement, with an emphasis on allocating more funds towards Polish education. The scale of this investment certainly is immense, with costs projected at $4.6 billion. Poland's geographical location offers the potential for effective collaboration with Intel's manufacturing facilities in Germany and Ireland, and this was highlighted by Pat Gesslinger, Intel's CEO, during a recent conference in Wrocław. While criticism towards Donald Tusk's government's actions haven't escaped the notice of their opposition. Sebastian Kaleta, a member of the Sovereign Poland Party, raised concerns about the government's handling of such a significant investment, hinting at the fact that there may be potential interest in taking over certain parts of the project by Poland's western neighbors in Germany. The delay in the Intel factory, along with other infrastructure projects like the CPK, raises questions about Poland's developmental trajectory under Tusk's administration. Well, amid increasing pressure from the East as well as internal tensions at home, Ukraine's Western allies are arriving to Kyiv to reassure President Zelensky and his government that their support is unwavering. The Kyiv government is short on funds, and their military is in increasingly short supply of munitions. In addition, the Kremlin's ambitions seem to be growing, considering recent statements made by Russian President Vladimir Putin calling for an expansion of what he calls demilitarized zones. Now, the city of Kharkiv was mentioned in his statements. Earlier today, during a visit by Portuguese Foreign Minister João Cravinho in Kyiv, Portugal reiterated its support for Ukraine. This in terms of military support as well as in terms of EU and NATO accession. In a joint news conference with his Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba, Cravinho said Portugal will support Kyiv for as long as necessary until victory, and said that Ukraine's place is within NATO. We will be active on three fronts. On the bilateral front, supporting Ukraine for as long as necessary until victory. On the European Union front, being an active supporter of Ukraine within the European Union and supporting rapid progress in the accession negotiations, starting naturally with the first intergovernmental conference, which in our opinion should be held as quickly as possible, and also supporting the process of bringing Ukraine closer to the transatlantic alliance, given that Ukraine's place is effectively within our alliance, within NATO. Kuleba said that a military and political shakeup that is expected to happen soon will not have any impact on Kyiv's relations with its Western allies. Speculation has gripped Ukraine for weeks over suggestions that the president was about to dismiss the highly popular army commander, General Valery Zaluzhny. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell also arrived in Kyiv today, bearing some good news. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell also arrived in Kyiv today, bearing some good news. The European Union approved a 4-year, €50 billion facility for Ukraine last week, in a major boost for Kyiv, which depends heavily on its Western allies for military and financial support.
Thanks to the leadership of the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, finally all member states agreed on giving these 50 billion for support to Ukraine in a moment in which certainly Ukraine needs that more. And we will continue working in order to increase our military support.
Borrell said that his talks in Kyiv would discuss support for Ukraine on both the military and financial sides, as well as Kyiv's progress in its reform path in its bid to join the 27-member bloc. Ukrainian military officials have said they face an acute shortage of ammunition and artillery shells as Russian forces press on with renewed assaults on several areas in the east and southeast of the country. Borrell was in Poland yesterday, meeting with Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski in an effort to address just that problem. Borrell said yesterday that the problem in Europe isn't insufficient European production capacity, but the fact that the munitions are already spoken for by contract to other third parties. Now, he called for individual member states to make a political decision and delay delivery to their other clients, giving precedence to Ukraine. Well, at the UN yesterday, Russia accused President Joe Biden of carrying out strikes in Iraq and Syria to boost his image as the presidential election campaign is heating up, not in retaliation for a deadly attack on U.S. soldiers. We see in these flex their muscles attempts, first of all, a desire to influence the domestic political landscape in America, a desire to somehow correct the disastrous image of the current American administration on the international arena, as the presidential election campaign is heating up. Russia's UN ambassador, Vasily Nebenzia, at the meeting of the Security Council on these strikes, which was requested by Moscow, said there was no justification for the U.S. action. The U.S. began the airstrikes on Friday against dozens of targets linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, and allied groups after 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in Jordan in an attack that Washington blames on Iranian-backed militias. Now, U.S. voters will go to the polls in November to elect a president for the next 4 years. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Nebenzia's remarks about Biden. Well, Deputy U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, justified the U.S. strikes in Syria and Iraq under Article 51 of the founding UN Charter, which covers the individual or collective right of states to self-defense against armed attack.
I also want to stress that these strikes are separate and distinct from the coalition strikes in Yemen, which were in response to the Iranian-backed Houthis' lawless attacks on naval vessels and international shipping in the Red Sea. Let me be clear. The United States does not desire more conflict in a region when we are actively working to contain and de-escalate the conflict in Gaza. And we are not seeking a direct conflict with Iran. But we will continue to defend our personnel against unacceptable attacks, period.
He also reiterated that the U.S. does not want the conflict with Iran to escalate. He also added that the strikes in Syria and Iraq were a separate and distinct operation from U.S. and British strikes against the Iran-aligned Houthi group in Yemen in response to the Houthi targeting of shipping in the Red Sea. The Pentagon on Monday said it was not aware of any Iranian deaths in the recent strikes. Iran's UN ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani condemned the U.S. action as illegal and unjustified.
All of the resistance groups in the region are independent, and their decisions and actions are motivated by their legitimate rights under international law that are ending the illegal presence of U.S. in their territories, stopping the genocide in Gaza, and ending the occupation of Palestinian territories. Therefore, any attempt to attribute these actions to Iran or its armed forces is misleading, baseless, and unacceptable. Iran never seeks to contribute to the spillover in the region.
Well, the farmer revolution continues throughout the European continent. Today, it was the Spanish farmers who blocked traffic on several important highways around the country. They set makeshift barricades on fire as they joined their colleagues in other European countries, protesting against high costs, local bureaucracy, and the EU's green agenda.
Today we are here because we want to take care of the soil and the animals. Stop all these documents that are coming from the Europe, because we don't want to lose our time to make more papers. Just we are farmers. We are the people that take care of the soil, take care of the animals, take care of your health, your food.
At least 14 highways in the regions of Catalonia, Andalusia, Castile-La Mancha, and Valencia were blockaded. Asaja and other associations had called for protests as of Thursday, but many farmers took to the roads with their tractors today, snarling traffic throughout the country, from Seville and Granada in the south up to Girona near the French border. Over the past few days, blockades in France and Belgium have sometimes escalated into violent clashes with police. Like their European counterparts, Spanish farmers say they are weighed down by European regulations, low prices, and rising production costs, while lacking government support. In response, Spain's agricultural ministry announced on Tuesday it would distribute an extra €269 million in aid to nearly 140,000 farmers to help alleviate the impact from the long-running drought and the war in Ukraine. And Bulgarian farmers also blocked roads across their country today. In addition to those in Spain, farmers in Bulgaria say that while funding was crucial and urgently needed, their problems were that subsidies were received a year late, and they're forced to take loans at increasingly high interest rates. Now, dozens of tractors parading with Bulgarian flags disrupted traffic in several Bulgarian towns, with some farmers burning hay in the middle of the road to protest what they perceive as a lack of action from the government in Sofia. All in all, European farmers' anger stems from low prices for produce, rising costs, cheap imports, and constraints imposed by the EU's drive to fight climate change. Now, all of this makes European farmers less competitive than their peers in other regions, and this could drive European agriculture into bankruptcy.